And I'm not so sure it still isn't. But I'm still in the game, and I'm grateful that I have the ability to stay in the game. Everyone does not have that ability, and they should not have to have that ability to stay in the game. But maybe if you're really going to succeed, you have to have it, because that's the test. The test of whether you stand or fall is the true test of who you are. So the education thing is a real big thing with me. I really wish Mr. Bezos would take it on. Maybe and I know, Gates do a lot of things for education in terms of making sure you have the right software, the right blah, blah. But it's larger than that. Until the educational material from pre-K on is changed, nothing will not change. I don't care how many computers you have. It's just not going to change, because there's so many influences that are negative to that. And until those influences start to reverse, so you get it. And the only way you're going to reach every individual is through education. Because basically so far in this country, all kids are obligated to go to school. Their parents are obligated to get them to school. So you will reach them. You will touch them. And I know there's all these kinds of things where certain parents probably don't even want somebody said they didn't want their kids to know about slavery or the Holocaust, because, it was going to cause them some kind of traumatic blah, blah, blah. It's history. It is. It happened. We do not want to repeat it. Some of those kids may be in a position one day that if they didn't know that this is what happened when you do ABC, they're going to do ABC. So there's a way to present it so it's not traumatic. So they're not having nightmares. Basically, it needs to be taught. The education system needs to be changed, and someone needs to take that on. Like I said, that's bigger than life. It can't be some little, whatever kind of, well, let's just say little person, because they're going to get crushed before they even get started. It has to be someone who commands attention, someone whose power and money commands attention. That maybe someone will pay attention. Now, I am not saying even with that, there could probably be people working against them, because they feel that if this person with XYZ credibility takes this on, they know something, and then there'll be maybe more of these XYZ people with power and money in the country. And then that means JoJo over here is going to lose status because there's too many in the room. That's never going to happen, because you don't have everyone wanting the same thing. There are people who just want to have a comfortable life. They want education. They want a comfortable place to live. They want an education for their children. They want health care. They want the simple things. They aren't trying to be a multi-billionaire. They aren't trying to even run a multi-million-dollar company. They're just fine, and there is nothing wrong with that. Though that particular person or persons are as important as the billionaire, because if you do not have them in large numbers, you cannot be a billionaire. So everybody has a purpose, everybody has value, and that's why the desires of everyone for a basic comfortable life needs to be taken into consideration. It's not going to happen for everybody, but at least there needs to be not as many stop gates put up to stop the people that want to be, because you have to remember there's almost an equal number or more that do not want to be. We're all wired different. Our DNA is different. And just like I said with the Republicans and the Democrats, why we think differently based upon who we are and our DNA and all of that. That is always going to be. That is not going to change, which means everyone is never going to be on the same page. Everyone is never going to want the same thing. But it does mean that those powers and those instruments, for lack of a better word, that are in place to stop people need to be removed. Definitely. They are not necessary. They are purposely put there for that reason. There's ways to get around it. And back to another subject of the immigrants and, caging kids and all of that. And we're talking about terrorism. Do you realize the damage that's being done to those kids? Oh, we're creating a whole lot of terrorists just from being in caging all of those children. We're doing that. We are doing that. And I said to someone that I was talking about it, and how I wanted to do something for the cause, and how much damage this was doing to the kids. And they said, well, coming from the environment they were coming from, they were already damaged. I was like, I couldn't say anything, because just because you're poor, for lack of a better words, and I'm not going to even assume all of them were poor, but that's just the only word I can think of right now, does not mean that you are damaged. You have as many damaged middle class, upper class, the top of the line kids that is any other kids. Just because, you don't have all of the bells and whistles and da 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 does not mean that you are damaged. It was like, for example, when I was growing up and I lived in the country, and, we love the town kids and so forth and so on. And it seems like the little town, which was really not much of a town in terms of towns now that I look back and I realize it. But, you didn't really feel all that wealthy because you were a country kid. And then after I came north and I realized, wait a minute, we had a house with X number of acres of land. We had pigs, we had chickens, we had horses, we had a mule. My grandmother had a garden, we had sweet potatoes, we had, organic. Everything was organic. And I says, that was pretty wealthy. But I didn't think of it in that way. Went to church on Sunday, went to revival, got religion. That's another whole sidebar. That's a funny story there. But the bottom line is the blocks, the stop gates that's being put before children and put before to purposely hold people back. I mean, you can get caught up in one of these systems and the Lord, you can spend a lifetime trying to get out, and what happens is you can spiral down, and it's just geared that way. Like even with the child support system, yes, child support needs to be paid. Whoever, mother, father, needs to be paid to support the children. It needs to be done. But I was, how do I say it? I don't want to say damned or whatever, but anyway, I was caught up in that system with my son, and there was nothing wrong with the system. It wasn't about paying the child support. It was about getting time spent with the child. And this was not something the mom wanted and the court didn't want. And so we ended up fighting for probably 13 years to a tune of probably almost $1 million, and nothing happened. I mean, and it got crazy. It was so obvious, the bias in that courtroom. And the thing where they finally backed off of not trying to put my son in jail was the judge wanted to send him to jail because he couldn't get a life insurance policy because he had one when he was in the NFL. He didn't have that anymore, but now he's a diabetic, so he can't get that life insurance policy. And so the judge is asking the mom, does she want to send him to jail or not? And of course the mom says no. And that was the last straw with me. With that, I wrote everybody I could. I wrote congressman. I even wrote Elizabeth Warren. I put together a book this thick and walked it into the FBI's office. It was like, back off. And the judge backed off with that, trying to come up with something to put him in jail. But he still didn't get time with his son until his son was old enough to say, I want to be with my dad. So all that money wasted, all of that time and the pain and suffering to my grandson because of this. You can take the mom, that's one story. But the judge, that was totally off the records. And there's just stuff that could be somehow corrected. And maybe that's never going to be corrected. I don't know. But the bottom line of that was, had it not been for me,